A lot of people think of me as a war hawk, and I guess in some ways that's fair, and in some ways it's not. But this whole book is to try to do what Churchill tried to do in the 1930s. I mean, I'm no Winston Churchill, heaven knows. But if I can wake people up and say, we really ought to pay attention to this and maybe save a couple of lives that way, I will have done my job on this earth.
Well, definitely. And a lot of times I see in the liberal arena that people tend to attack those and call them by these different names, war hawks and warmongers and hate mongers, when they're people that really, really want to address the issue, when you want to look at it with both eyes open and say, let's not put our head in the sand, let's not run and hide, let's not build white flags. Those people often get attacked, and the messages they bring, you often find a lot of arrows in your front and back. And,
and that's fine. I've been in this goofy town long enough. I got a pretty thick skin. They can say what they like. I'm going to continue to speak out in the way that I believe is correct, and as I believe the facts and history support what I say.
Well, absolutely. Absolutely. And I just enjoy it because I enjoy people that don't always show you their backside when there's a little bit of opposition. And you go right in there with a smile on your face to tell the truth. And it shocks a lot of liberals because they're not expecting that. It's not the way they live their lives, but it's definitely one of your assets. When you talk a little bit about Vladimir Putin and this Iran conflict, I see that as probably the one of the future situations we're going to have to deal with. What do you see as far as the future with that situation?
Well, Iran is the biggest question we face right now. I do believe that unless we take much more energetic action against Iran, they will achieve nuclear weapons within the next couple of years. And at that point, the world will be safe for nothing other than Islamic terrorism. So we need to step up. We need to stand up and figure out what we really want to do. I do believe President Bush has pretty well dropped the ball on this, and we are not going to be doing anything, far less what we may need to be doing before they get the bomb. Whether the Israelis will attack Iran or not, I don't know. I suspect strongly that they will, and unless they have some sorts of assistance from us, things could get out of control over there very badly and hurt not just the Israelis but our interests as well. So I think that very likely what you're going to see if Mr. Obama gets elected is that we will end up pulling out of Iraq. Iraq will fall apart into 3 or more separate little states, and there will be constant war over there. Iran will benefit enormously. And quite frankly, I hate to say this, but I do believe we could see a nuclear war in the Middle East within our lifetimes.
Well, obviously it is going to be a pressure point in our allies such as Israel, which we have a responsibility as an ally to be concerned about them. And I get frustrated sometimes when I see forces and people that want to restrain Israel from defending themselves. They will be in a pressure point to make some hard decisions and on their own self-defense. And I feel confident they will. But, again, that causes ramifications. And, in your article, Jed, you talked a little bit talking about words again. Of course, we have the front face of Iran with Ahmadinejad, and I'm thoroughly convinced that he's a Mad Hatter. But you talk about there are people behind him that actually are power players as well.
Sure. They really are the biggest power players. Let me just argue with you politely for a minute on this business of him being a Mad Hatter. I think it's very convenient for us to categorize him and people like him that way, but in the culture in which he stands, in the culture for which he speaks, he's perfectly sane. If you look at Shia Islam, they do believe in this 12th Imam, and the issue of bringing the 12th Imam back requires an apocalyptic event on Earth. It is, I'm certainly no religious scholar, but I do believe this is the only religion that believes that an apocalypse, basically the second coming of a Messiah, can be precipitated by the act of a man rather than purely by the act of God. And these are pretty scary guys.
Well, and I guess what you're doing there is exactly what your book says. You're looking at the words of these individuals from the position from which they say it.
Yeah.
And that does make a difference. We in Western society have a hard time understanding or putting our heads into the minds of people over there But I think it's going to be the next issue that we're going to have to deal with. And it seems as though the president, who I support, has used all of his strength. I don't know if he's aged in dog years in the war on terror, fighting Democrats and liberals. I know he has to some degree, but
Sure.
but he seems to be really in neutral on Iran and the presidential elections, which you touched on. And I know you talk all over the nation about these. I've seen you debate many people on what the future will be with this presidential election. I think it's going to be paramount. And you've talked about Obama here and that he may, I see that he is going to be forced by his special interest groups. His platform has been cut and run. And even if he tries to move to the middle, you still agree that we're going to be looking at a pullout of some sort?
Yeah, I don't think he's going to be able to back away from that. I think that he has committed himself to a withdrawal from Iraq regardless of the circumstances, and I do believe he is sufficiently ignorant of both history and the military, and frankly of the situation over there, that he will make some very disastrous decisions if he becomes president.
I think you're right. I've been battling some of his constituents and supporters in Code Pink and some of these other folks in California recently myself. And folks, the book is in the words of our enemies, and it's by the author Jed Babbin. Now, you can find this book in several different ways. There is a bookstore. You can go very conveniently at Human Events at www.humanevents.com. The book is also available at Amazon.com as well as all of your major book outlets. For our radio listeners, for your convenience, we have linked this book on our master website of Superior Conservative Values at www.ibbetsonusa.com. I think you've touched on a very important point in all the books that are out, Jed, looking at all the courses of action that we should take. I think it's important that we listen and see what our enemies are telling us. And sometimes in the battle roar of trying to take some kind of action, we don't. And we look back at things like Mein Kampf. We look back at these fatwas and we think, how could we not have seen it? And it was there right ahead. I just want to appreciate you for coming on our show. We really appreciate your time. I know you're a very busy individual. Do you have any kind of parting thoughts that you might want to depart to our Conscience of Kansas listeners on the book and on the issues of terrorism and national security?
Well, just basically to say that, we Americans have the great freedom, the freedom of the press and the freedom to think. So it's our responsibility to read and to try not to just see, but to observe. Don't just hear, but listen and judge. You're free people. There's no one who should make these decisions for you. And when you think and when you observe and when you listen, speak out. Tell the people in Congress what you think, because they won't know otherwise.
Very good. Very wise words from, I believe, a very wise man, like I say, a truth talker. And I lay out the praises there, not to everyone, Jed, in that you're doing a very important work with your writings, and especially with this Human Events, in these outlets where people can go and get information that they're not going to get from the mainstream media, that's going to be filtered out, that's going to be left on the cutting room floor, where you can go and hear from these very inspirational, intelligent conservatives and read your own writings as well. And folks, you can find that at www.humanevents.com. And again, the book is In the Words of Our Enemies, a very cogent book on a very important subject. And Jed Babbin, we want to thank you for being on the Conscience of Kansas radio program, and you're welcome back here at any time you would like.
Well, thanks very much. We'll do it again soon.
Very good. Thank you.